Teachers of Reddit, what's the difference between 2000, 2010, and 2020 students? Everybody is going tech, so I'll go with cultural. All teens rebel. They all think they have it right and the grown-ups have it wrong. But they show it differently. In 97 the prevailing word was anger. I hate the way things are. Kids were harsher, meaner. Being nasty was the way to show you're cool. I saw a lot of kids get their kicks out of breaking the Santa illusion for grade schoolers, for example. 17 kids are much nicer to each other. Think of the music of the time. Smashing Pumpkins, Nin, and the like. In spite all my rage, I am still just a rat in a cage. In 07 the word was mope. Kids were softening up, being nicer to each other, but also getting more into the sadness is beautiful kind of thing. They weren't angry at the adults so much as they just wanted them to go away and hide into their hoodies. Leave me alone to my solitude. Consider the way emo was huge at this time. In 17 kids are much nicer to each other. They're kinder to young kids and friendlier in general. But there's this strange undercurrent of competition to be the most good person, which leads to the weird yes mayonnaise is a gender if that's how you identify kind of thing. In 2017 kids want to explain to the grown-ups how they're all bigots. They also handle failure far worse than previous generations. 17 kids try harder and genuinely want to succeed in ways that the 97 kids didn't. In 1997 you were cool if you avoided working hard and didn't care if you failed. But 97 kids also recovered from adversity faster. They didn't bruise as easily. They were harder, meaner kids, but also didn't quit as easily and thrived on constructive criticism. Now there's bits of each of these personality types in every year. There were nice kids who were also soft in 97, and there are mopey emo types now. But the prevailing culture shifted these ways. I feel like this was what was portrayed in 21 Jump Street. I see a lot of people in this thread mentioning how high schoolers these days aren't as creative or don't take risks as often or can't figure stuff out on their own. I'm a high school senior, and I can only speak from my perspective. But for me, I'm hesitant to take risks because the consequences are so great. Let's say that I wanted to take a challenging IB class and try to push myself a little harder. If I fail or get a poor grade, that drags down my GPA and can seriously mess up my options for the future. If college admissions see a 3.0 and a 3.2 from applicants from the same background, they'll probably take the 3.2. So bam. Because you took a risk, you can't get into the college you wanted to. Colleges don't see that you challenged yourself and took a risk and learned from your failure. They see the failure itself and dismiss you for it. That mindset, one of, you have to be perfect and don't mess this up or else, is one that I see all over. So much is expected of me that it's hard to take risk and deal with failure because not only do you have yourself to beat up over it, but everyone around you also berates you for it. It's hard to take risks when it seems like your entire self-worth and future is at stake. Standard disclaimer, I was not in school before the 2000s. This is my experience as a student and member of the younger generation. The trends and examples I wrote about don't necessarily pertain to me. So while the advice is dearly appreciated, I was simply writing about the things I see in my classmates and around me. Electronics. Hands down. They are the most wonderful gift and the biggest handicap at the same time. Too many students use them as crutches or distractions instead of using it as a tool. Use them as crutches. Even as an adult I'm guilty of this. 10-year-old me was a much better speller. My father graduated high school in the mid-60s. After graduation, he and a few friends rented a sailboat and went from the Carolina coast to the Bahamas. Young, free, healthy men spent a few days sailing, a week on the beach, and sailed home. When I graduated, shortly after 9/11, I tried to repeat this trip with a few of my friends. No one would rent their sailboat to a couple 18-year-olds. I guess societal trust has changed. We finally find one through a friend of my father and set sail for the Bahamas. 2 days in and we see a helicopter, then a Coast Guard vessel. Then we're boarded by us government guys with guns who say, "Alright, boys, what is it today? You moving guns or drugs?" After searching the boat for hours, and it's a tiny boat, and finding nothing, we are let go, but instructed to turn around and sail home under threat of arrest if we continued south. Yeah, so I guess things have changed a bit. The whole be cool stay in school thing seemed to work. I'm not a teacher, but I used to volunteer as a middle school basketball coach. Kids take school more seriously than when I was a kid, which is a great thing. Yes, I've always heard about stereotypes. High school, like jocks not caring about grades and partying all the time. Some of my best friends are sports players and they work incredibly hard. I was a student in 1997 at the school I now teach at, so I can answer this one. 2017 students are infinitely more polite, harder working and more intelligent than my cohort ever was. They're much less likely to smoke. They don't drink cider on the playing field at lunchtime. And they don't sell each other crappy weed in industrial quantities. I gather they sell each other excellent quality weed in very small quantities instead. It's a big secondary school on a fairly deprived estate, so these aren't exactly kids who go to etiquette classes after school, but I literally can't open a door by myself because some 16-year-old with mutton chops will spring out to open it for me. If I'd done that when I was at school, it would have been instant social death. Where I am, H has become the new thing within the last 5-ish years. Weed is normal. Since I am an old fart who has been teaching during all of these years, I will give my impression. The main difference I see is in attention span and impulsivity. The 2017ers cannot focus on only one thing. If I am talking, they will be doing 10 other things. They have the attention span of a gnat and can't sit still for love nor money. But if I stop and ask what I just said, they can usually quote me word for word. I've seen an exponential increase in attention deficit and vestibular issues. But the really strange thing is they just don't seem curious. Maybe they are so bombarded with information they don't need to be. Where kids before would ask lots of questions, want to know and find out things, the 2017ers just seem like flatliners who could care less. Content knowledge has been watered down because they can just Google it, but they don't. If I had Google at their age, I would have been in heaven. 2017ers can literally find out anything in the world they want to know at the touch of a few buttons, and they just can't be bothered, or can't still long enough to do it. There's one elementary teacher's take. Mom is a teacher for generally 3 to 5 year olds. I got this. Kids are certainly more abstract thinkers than they used to be. This was a project they did about food starting with P. 97, pineapple, pickles, 07, pecan, peanut, potatoes, pears, 17, purple lollipops, pigs in a blanket, pepperoni pizza. They're more likely to tell stories and negotiate. One kid roughly explained the concept of double jeopardy. You can't get in trouble for the same thing twice. To a teacher he was having a conversation with. One kid said that he wasn't hitting his classmate, but the wind pushed him hand when he was running. If they have a question that you can't, sometimes this means won't answer, they'll ask you to use your phone or the computer to find the answer. It seems like they're aware that information is very close at hand and no question doesn't have an answer. They don't take just because or no reason at face value anymore. Not a bad thing at all that they know to question nonsensical answers like that. Not a teacher, but many in the family, elementary level, and they say the kids are basically the same, but the parents are so much worse. They're not involved in their child's education, blaming the teacher for poor scores despite never even sitting down and reading a book with their kid. They don't follow through with discipline after their child misbehaves at school. The list goes on and on. Cute anecdote. In 1994, I played a record in a class. When the record ended, one of the students asked me how to rewind it. Yesterday, I asked a student to play a CD and the student could not figure out how to get the CD to play. She kept pushing the tape deck play button. In just over 30 years we have archived 3 different music players. I've worked in a high school for a while. 1997, better music, worse beer and no real grasp on technology. Heck, no real access to it either, unless you were in a 15K modem in a computer lab. This mean less P and much more face-to-face interaction. 2007, collection of buttholes. This was the zenith of bullying. My high school averages about 250 graduates each year. Of those 250, you would not want to be around 220 of them. Just entitled buttholes. Still had flip phones, and not as much internet, olo MySpace. That group took perverse pleasure in making someone's life miserable. Alcohol was huge, with old school keggers at every opportunity. A lot of prego girls, a lot of physical shaming, assault complaints. It was awful. 2017. The internet is king. Kids are remarkably better behaved because they are kinder. Believe it or not, kids will quickly rise to the defense of a trans person or someone being bullied. Weed rules the intoxication market. You rarely hear about a party now. Mostly just 5-10 kids in a basement smoking up. My high school lost 5 kids from 2002 to 2006 in drinking and driving accidents. None since. Overall, this is a much nicer school to work in than 10 years ago. Now if the parents would just calm the frick down, most of these kids would work issues out themselves. Started teaching high school in 1995. Still teach. 1997. High school kids fall into distinct categories as do the course titles. College bound and not college bound, which is perfectly okay with parents and kids. Lots of electives for kids to explore their strengths and passions. Only college bound kids take standardized tests, and these kids are confident, creative, and inquisitive. Non-college bound kids are chill, too, and have confidence that their skills and work ethic will land them a decent middle-class life. Kids aren't very inclusive or accepting of differences. 2007. Budget cuts to education equals loss of electives, arts, and music. New standardized testing requirements begin, and all kids regularly sit 4 hours taking tests that simply beat them down. An all kids are college bound mentality is the norm. Kids are unprepared, and when they earn average grades in challenging classes, the kids feel stupid and complain to parents, who decide it's the fault of the overpaid, underworked teacher. Every kid is going to be a doctor, even the ones who can't pass chemistry. Kids are more inclusive, but online bullying becomes a huge distraction. 2017. Still no electives as they are expensive to run. Instead, students are pushed out into early college and online courses. The class of 2017 knows nothing other than the regular and systematic beating down of standardized tests. Because a gradebook app immediately gives them a notification, green arrow up or a red arrow down, when grades are entered. They are obsessed with grades. They see little correlation between grades and learning. They haven't been asked to be creative or inquisitive without technology in years, and when challenged to do so now, they become frustrated, and more than ever, they feel stupid. They fear failure and student debt, and while they want to go to college and become doctors, they are afraid to verbalize this dream. Kids are much nicer to each other and way more inclusive. Karate instructor here. Different than a traditional school teacher, but I've seen some crap. When I was a young student back in 1997, things were still pretty old school. We didn't have much as far as body protection for sparring. We didn't have regular water breaks during class. And for our black belt exam we were forced to go when we reached a certain rank and repeated until we passed. Took me 3 times to pass. My parents were okay with any and all discipline I received from my instructors. When I began to seriously teach in 2007, the kids would respect me for the most part. I had a few kids diagnosed with ADHD or something similar, and I had to learn to adapt to them. No big deal. Now in 2017, I can say I've encountered a big shift in the past decade. Kids are more openly disrespectful to me, especially the teenagers. And the worst part is more parents take offense when I discipline their kids for inappropriate behavior. I'll usually just give them push-ups or have them sit on the side, but I guess that's just too much for some parents to handle. Also, it seems like more kids are being diagnosed with autism, and so many parents like to just write off bad behavior to their disability, which is not entirely true. As someone with ADHD, it drives me crazy when people blame their own bad behavior on it. ADHD doesn't make you an butthole. It may be hard for me to not zone out during a lecture class, but I don't get a free pass to be a tool. Not a teacher but old. In high school, late 80s, me and my friends used to play the assassination game where we would shoot each other with those suction cup and Nerf guns. Anywhere. Between class battles were common. We would even sneak out of class, open the door to a class that a friend was in, and shoot them in the back of the head, right in front of the teacher and the whole class. The only thing that would happen is we get our guns taken away. We had several backups in our lockers. The other thing was I was in band and had a crush on several of the flag corps. I would draw these scenes. Art Geek 2, where the flag corps were viciously murdering the entire band with their ninja type flag weapons. The whole thing. Beheadings, disembowelment, evisceration. Everyone loved them, including the band directors who would post them in the window of their offices so that everyone could see them. I cannot see that happening today. 97. After high school I can go to college if I want to or not, and easily find a job either way. 07. After high school I need a college degree but it's going to put me in serious debt and my job prospects are low. 17. I think I want to go to college, but I don't know what for, and I really don't want to go unless it'll lead directly to a high paying job because my debt will be so high. Graduated HS in 1995. Taught middle high school in 2007 and am teaching college in 2017. I'd argue the biggest difference is technology. In the 90s, pagas were all the rage and the internet was relatively new to the masses and something you did sitting down at a computer, and excruciatingly slow. So as a teenager we spent a lot of time hanging out with each other one-on-one with an absence of technology. Sometimes we'd father to play video games, but multiplayer was limited to a local network or split screen. Most commonly we just take turns. But I'd argue, technology was not something we spent a lot of time on, but rather dabbled with. 2007 was at the beginning of the smartphone revolution. Many, maybe most, students at this point have cell phones. Social media, YouTube were coming of age, and that has changed students a lot, in my opinion. I used to get annoyed, borderline angry when I saw a group of people at dinner all on their phones. 2017. Social media is rampant. A lot of studies have correlated increasing usage of social media with social disconnectedness and even depression. It is as if the creation of virtual social circles has actually created less personal social cohesion. So it's important to put your phone down and go just hang out more, rather than less. You'll hear, back in my day kids, fill in the blank. And it's for the most part horse crap. Kids are kids. Teens are teens. Some are put together. Some have huge obstacles to overcome. Progress that has been made. It seems to me that young people are much more tolerant of other people's physical orientation, culture and religion compared when I was a kid. I don't know anyone from my 700+ high school that was out of the closet or identified as anything other than Christian publicly. I never thought I would see gay marriage happen, or pot legalized for that matter. And now the focus on transgender issues is at society's forefront. These are great steps that can't not be overlooked and discounted. So back in my day, kids played outside and with each other, teaching kids them healthy social relationships. But people that weren't the norm were silenced. These rascals today spend too much goddamn time on their phones but live in a more accepting society. Oh yeah, and have dank memes. I think you have a unique perspective on this as you have moved from middle school to college in that time frame, so you have sort of followed the same group generation through school. Very interesting. Student in 97. Hard fact memorization and conformity to norm was present, but being heavily influenced by punk in the early 90s gave me proper perspective and I knew when the man was trying to pull one over on me. Still had school spirit. Still went to Friday night football. Still passed notes to pretty girls. Drugs were there but not prevalent. Teacher in 07. Less school pride. More drugs. Better note passing. Texts. And much less memorization. Very apathetic except for the top 1/3 of class. Bottom 2/3 were just getting by. Shift of information from the few teacher to online starting to pick up. I start noticing I have to change how I do things or I'm going to have problems. Teacher in 17. Fact obfuscation highly prevalent. Teaching is now more centered on what you do with facts. How do you sort through online trash to get facts? How can we connect and expand upon the facts we know to make those facts relevant to our lives? Drugs rampant. Teachers competing with devices for attention. Sometimes I think if my lesson was on YouTube, Netflix or Snapchat I'd get better results. 97 facts are in hands of teachers. 07 facts are migrating online. 17 facts and crap online. Teaching critical thinking to help sift through the crap and connect facts. In my case, It's not the change in students, but the change in environment. In the late 80s, early 90s, bomb threats were taken a bit more lightly than they are now. Today it's multiple felonies, but back then it was a serious talking to from the principal, maybe a suspension. Anyhow, my friend had a band, and he wanted exposure, so he set up a generator, a drum kit, and a few amps in the back of a pickup. He called in a bomb threat, and while they were clearing the school, he played a quick set to an audience of 2,000 in the school parking lot. Tracing bomb threats back to individuals was very difficult back then, so while it was obvious what happened, there was no proof, and he went unpunished. We can all imagine how that would go down today. The difference between 1997 and 2007 isn't that pronounced. In 2007, we were really just in the early stages of destroying real education with the standards movement. So, students graduating in 2007 still had a chance of knowing something. 2017, those kids are screwed. They have been educated entirely under a system that denies them any accountability. In 1997, a student could fail. Notice that responsibility lies with the student. Students graduating in 2017 have not been permitted to fail. If they don't achieve, they were left behind. Notice that responsibility there rests with the school. I get that we are starting to move past no child left behind, although my home state is still married to the standards. Those kids, I don't know what to say. In trying not to leave them behind, we have entirely left them behind. The skills deficit is staggering. I'm not even a teacher, just a high school senior, but I'd like to make a comment. Us kids often hear stories about how our parents were raised. Anecdotes such as, when we were kids, we used to leave the house after school without telling our parents where we were going or when we would be back. We would bike without friends to a creek and hang out until 1 AM. My dad. I bring up this example because it is so drastically different nowadays. Kids back in the 70s 90s had much more independence than they do now. If I want to go out, I have to tell my parents where I am going, who with, and when I'll be back. Part of the reason for this is the perceived danger of modern times. Many adults believe their generation was much safer than ours is, despite research indicating exactly the opposite. Probably because of the media's coverage of everything bad that goes on. Anyway, my point is that kids today never had the independence they needed to succeed in life. We are constantly relying on another person to help us out. And if you think about it, nature versus nurture, nature hasn't changed much, but the way we are raised has drastically shifted. Am I the only one who's currently a student and not relating to the descriptions the teachers are giving about today's students? Like my classmates are incredibly rude and lazy, not diligent and polite. 1997, the world is my oyster, I can do anything. 2007, the world is my oyster, I can do anything, but I need to make sure I have some extracurricular activities so I can get into a good college. 2017, the world is my oyster, I can do anything, but I need to make sure I have traveled to Africa and volunteered at an orphanage, played 95 sports, be proficient in 3 languages, hire a service to edit my application, hire a service to edit my life, have an extensive social media presence, be an entrepreneur, look like I just walked out of a modeling gig, get plastic surgery to fix my flaws, not have any flaws, be different and cool, while ironically still being the same as everyone else. Be pushy and entitled to make sure I get ahead and eat all organic, vegan, non-GMO, cruelty-free everything. Oh, but I need to make sure I have no social skills or life skills so that when I get out into the world I am like an infant baboon. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.